Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to break down a concept that is absolutely changing the game for how we build modern, scalable apps: event-driven architecture. So if you want to understand how the fastest, most resilient systems out there really work, you've come to the right place. All right, let's jump right in. So to really get this, think about it like this. The big shift is like going from making a phone call to setting off a line of dominoes. With a phone call, you dial, you wait, you're basically stuck until somebody answers. But with dominoes, you just give that first one a little nudge and the whole chain reaction just happens, all on its own. And that one simple shift in thinking, that's the core of everything we're going to talk about today. So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start with that old phone call method. Then we'll jump into the new chain reaction way of doing things. We'll introduce you to the key players, follow an event on a real journey using AWS, figure out how to pick the right service for the job, and then we'll wrap it all up with why this should matter to you.
Okay, so let's start with that phone call. Now, in the world of software, we call this a synchronous system or a request-response model. It's pretty simple. One service sends a direct request to another and then just waits for a reply.
And here's the big issue with this approach. Everything is tied together really tightly. If the service you're trying to call is slow, or maybe it's super busy, or worse, it just crashes, well, your service is just stuck there, waiting. This is how you get bottlenecks, and it means one little failure can bring the entire system to a grinding halt. It's kind of like getting a busy signal that never, ever ends.
Okay, so what's the alternative? We switch to the chain reaction model. This is what we call event-driven architecture, or EDA for short. The whole idea is that instead of services calling each other directly, they just react to events. They can trigger entire workflows without having to wait for each other.
So what even is an event? Well, it's just a little message, a fact, that something important happened. It's not a command telling something what to do, it's just a statement. Think of it like a little broadcast. Hey, a payment was just completed. Or, psst, a new file was just uploaded. That's it. It's just a record of what happened.
And here's how that domino effect works in practice. First, you have an event producer. This is what creates the event. It's the finger that tips that first domino. Then, an event router sees that domino fall. It's the component that directs the event to where it needs to go, which continues the chain reaction. And finally, you have one or more event consumers that receive that event and actually react to it. They're the dominoes that fall further down the line. All right, let's get to know these three players a little better, because understanding what each one does and what it doesn't do is really the key to seeing why this architecture is so powerful. First up, the event producer. This could be anything really. Your e-commerce site, a sensor, another part of your application. Its only job is to shout out, hey, this thing just happened. It sends out the event and then just moves on with its day. The crucial part is it has no idea who's listening, and frankly, it doesn't care. It's totally disconnected from whatever happens next. Next up, we have the event router. Now, this is the really smart part of the system. Think of it like a super organized, automated post office. It takes in all the events from all the producers, looks at them, and based on rules that you've set up, it sorts them and delivers them to exactly the right mailboxes. And finally, the event consumer. These are the services that are actually listening for certain types of mail. When the router delivers an event that a consumer cares about, it springs into action. It might update a database, send an email, or kick off an entirely new workflow. It's the final piece of the domino chain.
All right, analogies are great, but let's see how this actually works in the real world. Let's trace an event's journey using some popular services on AWS.
Let's follow this journey. So, step 1. A user places an order on your website. This immediately creates an event called Order Placed. That's our first domino. Step 2. Our router, in this case Amazon EventBridge, catches that event. It looks at its rulebook and sees a rule that says, hey, for every order-placed event, do this next thing. Step 3. That next thing is to trigger a Lambda function. This function's job is to write the order details into a DynamoDB database, but here's where it gets really cool. Step 4. That action of writing to the database itself creates a brand new event, thanks to something called DynamoDB streams. And finally, step 5. A second Lambda function, which was listening for events from that stream, gets triggered. Its one job? Send the customer a confirmation email. Do you see that chain reaction? One order kicked off a whole series of automated actions, and no single service had to wait on any other. It just flowed. So in that last example, I mentioned Amazon EventBridge as the router.
But you should know AWS actually has a few different tools for this, and picking the right one for your specific need is pretty important.
Okay, so when do you use which one? Let's break it down. Think of Amazon SQS as a simple queue, like a single file line at a ticket counter. It makes sure every single task gets done one by one, which is fantastic for handling big traffic spikes without losing anything. Then you have Amazon SNS. This is more like a megaphone. You shout one message, and it broadcasts it out to tons of different subscribers all at once. It's for a one-to-many fan-out. And finally, you have Amazon EventBridge. This is our smart mailroom. It can actually look inside the envelope, see the content of the event, and use some pretty complex rules to send it to exactly the right destination.
Okay, we've gone through the what and the how, but let's really get to the heart of it. Why does this matter? Why would you go through the trouble of building things this way?
This is where the magic really happens. First, you get incredible scalability. Your system can handle huge sudden spikes in traffic because the work just lines up and gets processed when resources are available. No panic, no manual scaling. Second, you get resilience. Remember how everything was tightly connected? Not anymore. Now, if one small part of your system fails, it doesn't take everything else down with it. The rest of the chain reaction just keeps going. And finally, and this one is huge, you get agility. Different teams can work on their own little pieces of the puzzle completely independently. The notifications team doesn't have to wait for the inventory team. As long as they agree on what the event looks like, they can innovate and deploy on their own schedule, which means you can move so much faster.
At the end of the day, event-driven architecture isn't just a technical pattern. It's really a shift in how we think about building systems. It lets us build applications that are way more robust, incredibly scalable, and just so much more flexible. It's all about cause and effect. So, the only question left is, what chain reaction are you going to build next?